Hi, it's Jan Schakowsky with my plans and pans for this week. I'm in my office. Behind me, you see a sign that says Pace, and that is an old flag that came from Italy when it was about the Iraq War, and it was on every balcony that we could see when we were there. So I absolutely wanted to bring one home. Also can be considered a rainbow flag, which is a second meaning, and I'm happy about that too. And then next to me, there's Proud Union Home. I'm a member of Union, and I'm happy to have that sign in my office so everyone can see that. Well, this was and still is a very interesting week on the impeachment front. Right now, there is questioning going on by our managers of the Republicans, and what is also really stirring up the pot is the fact that John Bolton, who was a former national security advisor and at one time close to President Trump, wrote a book. And the White House has had at least part of it since December. But now John Bolton has given it to some journalists, or at least the outline. And what we know now is that John Bolton very adamantly spoke to the president about how inappropriate it was to hold up aid to Ukraine in exchange for help from Ukraine for the president's re-election campaign. So the Republicans are very concerned, and it may be even this week that there's a vote on whether or not John Bolton and others may be allowed to testify, and that documents would also be produced, witnesses and documents. What Democrats are saying, and a vast majority of the American people are saying, is let's have a fair trial. We want to have witnesses and documents like any other trial in order to make it fair. In addition, we saw the release in Washington of the White House, Trump's so-called peace plan for the Middle East. I have to tell you, I call it a peace scam. It has no possibility of working. Essentially, what it does is give unilateral power to Israel. The Palestinians were never at the table for any kind of negotiation. Bibi Netanyahu was with him, and what I was looking at is, rather than a peace plan, this was an effort by two men, one impeached, the other under indictment, who were looking for a political answer to their problems by announcing a plan that some may approve of. But trust me, this is not going to be peace for the region. It had nothing to do with two-state solution, 2 states for 2 peoples, the Israelis and the Palestinians. So I was very, not surprised, but certainly disappointed and very pessimistic about anything really coming of that looks like peace. On an entirely different note, it was a big week in committees in the House of Representatives, including my Consumer Protection Committee on the safety of horses. In one committee, my subcommittee, we had a bill to make horse racing safer for both horses and jockeys. Chris McCarran, an award-winning Hall of Fame jockey who actually won the Kentucky Derby and other famous races, was there to testify that drugging horses on the day of a race puts those horses and their jockeys in danger. And that we needed a national organization to oversee medications given to horses and horse day activities. And so we are hoping that we're going to be able to pass this bill. It was a very interesting hearing. I'm particularly interested because at one time I did have a horse. And my horse, B.J. Sullivan, was kind of a loser at the track. I never knew him then, but he was good to me. So I have had a lifelong love affair with horses. The hearing that we had today was about horse meat. Um, it's not sold generally in the United States of America. There are no horse slaughtering plants allowed in the United States of America, but there's a big business in exporting horses to Mexico and to Canada for consumption. This is very dangerous because horses are not raised for food. They are injected with toxic chemicals. Certainly any horse that has any kind of illness or is on the track it can be full of chemicals that really can be dangerous for consumption. And so I have a bill called the SAFE Act that would actually prohibit the import or export of horses for the purpose of slaughter, and would make it illegal to have horse meat for consumption in the United States of America. And finally, I wanted to tell you that there was a joint meeting today about the coronavirus. So far, we actually have had in the state of Illinois one person that has had the coronavirus. There's screening now taking place at O'Hare, and so we're being very cautious about making sure that we minimize to the greatest extent our exposure to the coronavirus. And finally, today was the day that the trade agreement with Canada and Mexico was signed. As I think I've said to you probably several times before, I was on a working group that helped negotiate that agreement. The President of the United States is bragging about it being signed, but I want you to know that were it not for the 8-person working group appointed by Nancy Pelosi, one of the Democrats, this trade agreement never would have been signed because it was so flawed. Wasn't good for labor, and as far as my role, had a gift for big pharma that would have raised the cost of prescription drugs throughout our entire hemisphere. It would have given 20 years of patent exclusivity, a time when generics couldn't even come to the market for certain kinds of drugs. And so I was able to really press hard to get that provision out of the trade agreement, and it's gone. So there were a number of improvements for workers on all sides of the borders. There's an enforcement rule, and the head of the AFL-CIO, Rich Trumka, approved of this agreement. It's the first trade agreement I ever voted for. It's not perfect by any means. It's far better than the old NAFTA was, and it's far better than the flawed agreement that President Trump gave to us to work with. And so I think it is a step forward. We'll be monitoring all the time to make sure that the provisions that were agreed to are implemented. So that's the news for this week. Glad to see you. I'll see you next week with Plans and Pans. Thank you for watching my video. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel and follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, where my handle is @Jan Schakowsky.